We're a little bit late to the party getting this video released because we wanted to make sure we had the Gen 2 in-house here at Four Brothers so that we could develop our own report, if you will, of the information that we found based on our study hand-to-hand or gun-to-gun. Some other companies have already reported on this, and I agree with their findings based on what I found. But again, you know how we operate. It's trust but verify, and so we're verifying that in-house. The easiest and the best way, in my opinion, to determine whether you have the Gen 1 or the Gen 2 is to look at the geometry of the trigger guard and of the dust cover here right in front of the trigger guard itself. The Gen 1 has a straight cut radius front to back through here, and it has a single transition from that straight cut radius down to the trigger guard. So this is a Gen 1, and we've been very specific in showing that in the blog article that we wrote, whereas this Gen 1 these are actually the two pistols that we took pictures of for this article. So this is all in-house stuff. The Gen 1 has a straight cut through here and a single transition from that straight cut down to the trigger guard. So this is the area here that we're looking at for the Gen 1. In comparison, the Gen 2, this angle comes down to a radius and then a cut for a second radius, and that blend from this part of the radius of the dust cover to the trigger guard, there's three distinct surfaces there. So this is Gen 2. Again, this is the easiest way that, in my opinion, this is the easiest way for you to determine if you have a Gen 1 or a Gen 2 P365 AXG Legion. Gen 1, real quick, straight cut, single blend or single radius there. So two distinct surfaces and one radius connecting them. Gen 2, a radius cut to a radius cut, and then it comes down to this surface. So three distinct surfaces there, okay? The second way that you can identify it is the trigger guard width, if you have calipers. The Gen 1 is about 500 thousandths, or exactly half an inch, plus or minus a couple for manufacturing tolerances. We're getting $4.99. I was getting $4.99. I was getting $4.99, $4.98.5 on this one. This is a Gen 1. On the Gen 2, I was getting about $5.50. We're a little bit over. So there is a difference of almost a 1/16 of an inch between the trigger guard width itself, between the Gen 1 and the Gen 2. The Gen 2 being about a 1/16 of an inch, or a little bit over 50 thousandths thicker here. And then the third, there's another distinct, not as easy to distinguish difference in the guns, and you kind of have to look at them like this. The Gen 1 has a larger flat on the bottom side of the Picatinny rail here at the dust cover, so different geometry here, versus the Gen 2 has a smaller flat on the inside of the Picatinny rail here. So if you look at them side by side, you'll see the differences in the bottom of the Picatinny rail. In my opinion, if you only have one pistol at home and you're trying to figure out which one is which, that is not the best feature to try to use. This is the best feature to try to use. This is a clear telltale sign, especially with the pictures that we've got in the blog article here. So I wouldn't try to use this feature, but it is different. And it does look different from the end also compared to here. So this is a larger flat here on the end. This is smaller. And then the other dimension that is different that we didn't cover in the blog article is the distance top to bottom. 1.466 on the Gen 2. 1.530 on the Gen 1. So this is thicker on the Gen 1 versus this. That dimension, it determines it is the location of the rail to the top of the slide. So the Gen 1 lights are further away from the top of the slide or the center of the bore versus the Gen 2, which is shorter this way, so the lights ride higher. Okay, so all that to say, and here's our standards, we're going to make Gen 2 holsters specific to the Gen 2 grip module, and we're not going to try to come up with a universal holster that works with both, because the Gen 2 doesn't fit the Gen 1 holsters to our standards. Explaining our standards quickly, the holster has to slide in and out smoothly with between 8 and 10 pounds of force to extract it, plus range of motion when we make adjustments. We have a whole process in engineering that we use to determine the amount of force it takes to remove the gun. Bigger guns, heavier guns sometimes require more force, but averages 8 to 10 pounds for a small inside the waistband holster like this with a lighter gun. So if you listen, you hear a pop, no wiggle, no excessive wiggle. It's got room to go in and out. So that's Gen 1, and this is a Gen 1 holster. Now, this is the part that I don't suggest you do. Don't take a Gen 2 pistol and run it in a Gen 1 holster, because it's smaller top to bottom, so it's going to have extra room here, so it's going to wiggle, and the trigger guard is wider here than it is here, so you'll have to adjust your retention, and I don't like it. It's not our standards. It's not what we suggest you do. Will it work? Does it function? Sure, probably, yeah. I don't know. It's not something I suggest you do. In a pinch, it could work. I don't suggest you do it. It's got way too much room in there, and I just don't. From what I've extracted from other holster manufacturers that are explaining the same thing that we're explaining here, and just to be clear, we're all on the same page. These are two different pistols now, and they require their own holster. What I've gathered from other manufacturers is if you take the grip module off your gun, the Gen 1 ends in a 610. There's a manufacturing number here on the frame underneath the grip. The Gen 1 ends in a 610. The Gen 2 ends in an 868. Now, I haven't verified that from SIG. I have seen where others have reported that came from SIG, but I don't think it's necessary that you take your grip module off. Again, I suggest you just focus on this area right here, which is the shape and the transition from the dust cover to the trigger guard, and look at the differences. The Gen 1 goes straight across and right down into it without a complicated shape. The Gen 2 curves down into a second radius and then blends to the trigger guard from there. So it is distinct enough that you should be able to tell the differences just by looking at that. You don't have to measure anything. You don't have to take your grips off. You don't have to measure the height of the slide to the bottom of the rail. You don't have to measure the trigger guard if you just focus on these two areas here and here. If you have any questions regarding the Generation 1 versus the Generation 2 information that I've given you here, please reach out to us in the comments section here on the video or through the Contact Us portion of the website. We'll be more than happy to answer all of your questions and help you determine which generation of the pistol that you have, so that we can get you into a holster that is designed for that specific model. Hope this helps. Have a good day.